Alright, so here are my thoughts that resulted from the last video. What if instead of having to send maybe 15 pulses, you could just send a long pulse to increase the value or a short pulse to decrease the value? And as a result, this contraption in front of us is what I came up with. First, I'll introduce my lovely assistant, Sammy, my little girl.
Hi.
There she is. She doesn't have a lot to do in this video, so she's going to stand on the wool and go up and down. But my invention was the variable potentiometer. Now, technically a potentiometer is resistance, but you could call this resistance if you hooked it up to a comparator and were subtracting its value. So here's how it works. It's pretty straightforward. Subtract 1 from the output signal strength, reset it to 0, it's already 0, reset it to 15, or add 1 to the signal output strength. And you'll notice when I push add 1, Sammy jumps up in the air. Well, she jumped by herself first, but if you push it again, it continues to add 1. And she goes crazy. As the signal strength increases, every time I push it, it goes up 1. And you see that's just my regular meter. It's really increasing the signal strength by 1. We'll discuss how it does this in a minute. I can also subtract 1 from the signal strength. You'll notice whenever I click, the signal strength drops by 1. If I want to reset it to 0, clear it right out, everything drops. I'll reset it to 15, everything goes up. And so you can just sit here and, play with it, slowly adding and subtracting 1 from it. But let's discuss how it works. Reset it to 0. Alright. So you will recognize pretty quickly the familiar memory loop that goes right here. That's the memory loop. It's gotten quite much bigger, in fact, because it had to. And we'll explain why. Over here, we have the same add 1 that we saw before. And that makes sense. I'm adding 1 to the signal strength. And I do that by inverting the signal strength here, just like before, subtracting 1, and sure enough, this hopper only has 1 thing in it. And I subtract 1 when this button is pushed. It cuts power, which allows this to output its signal strength of 1, and therefore subtracts it from the overall measure, and then does a resubtraction there, and it loops around. Then over here, I had a new problem. Earlier in my last contraption, I was subtracting 1 by leaving an extra space of redstone, which would subtract 1. But now I needed to only optionally subtract 1, and of course, how better to do that than just like I do it there. I'm optionally subtracting 1 there from an inverted value, so I just optionally subtract 1 here in the exact same way. Sure enough, this contains only 1 item, so its signal strength is 1. And then reset to 0 says, puts its signal in here, which subtracts 15 from whatever the current signal is. That clears it right out. Reset to 15 obviously drops a signal strength of 15 directly into the circuit and immediately bumps it up to 15. And that's really all there is to it. It's pretty straightforward. You can try subtracting 1 from 0, but of course redstone power doesn't have negative. And you can try adding 1 to signal strength of 15, but nothing happens because there's nothing to add to. There is one little concern. The amount of time it takes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 ticks to make a full circuit. Well, conveniently, stone buttons are exactly 10 ticks long. But if the signal input were not exactly 10 ticks, you can actually end up with 2 values cycling around. And what will happen is one piston will rise and fall. So with the stone buttons, it works perfectly. But if I jump over to wooden buttons, and let's say I change this add 1 to a wooden button, you'll notice that a signal strength of 1.5 means that I've got a piston, I've got 1.5 in there. And you can see, 1.5. And the idea that you have a half is kind of cool and kind of really annoying. When I push it again, it will go up to 3. Exactly. Oh no, it went up a little further, but you get the idea. Stone buttons are an absolute must because they're exactly 10 ticks. That's interesting. I have an alternating 2 and 4 signal. Let me reset it. The fact, though, that you could get a partial signal caused me a lot of trouble later, as we'll see. But for the moment, there's my variable potentiometer, and there's Sammy. She stepped away for a minute, so she can't say goodbye, but that's the end of the video.